The thoughts, views, and comments expressed by Sidebar, its guests, callers, and advisors are not necessarily those of the management, ownership, or production unit of ILS Verizon Media Group. Sidebar, a 103.5 The Beat podcast, is a production of ILTV Studios and may not be reproduced or represented, in part or in its entirety, without the express written consent of Verizon Media Group. Sidebar is the intellectual property of Verizon Media Group. Copyright 2024. All rights reserved.
Hey, welcome to Sidebar, 103 The Beat podcast, powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. I'm going to have to ask, nay, beg your indulgence. I am a little under the weather. That is why my voice sounds like this. So for this episode, I may be a little bit of a mouth breather. So you may hear extra, and just forgive me for that. Also, that is the reason why, although I had planned to have guests this week, I thought it best to not be a full patient zero and, start another pandemic by breathing in somebody's face. Is this the flu? Who knows? Who knows? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But let's not find out. Let's not put them on other people. I have several things I want to talk with you about today. As always, I can tell you what it is. We're going to talk about immigration. We're going to get to that point. And you're like, oh God, Stephen, immigration again. Yes, constantly, over and repeatedly. But before we get to that, I know that it is election season. And there are all these signs all over the place. You know what would be a really good idea? And clearly it is possible, right? Every election cycle, you have persons put up all these signs, and invariably, the losers, often they just leave and they don't even go and pick up their own signs. And sometimes the winners will leave their signs about, but then sometimes they change it and they'll say, thank you for voting for us, and then Happy Mother's Day, and then Happy Father's Day and Happy New Year. At least they're repurposing it. But generally speaking, the signs get left all over the place. And it is an eyesore, particularly when it is the face of a loser, somebody who you did not choose and then abandons your constituency for another 5 years, which is, whatever. Ironically, I've seen in the past 2 years flyers and posters of Hubert Ingram. I've seen one of Shivago Lang, and I've definitely seen one of Travis Robinson left inside their old constituency. Well, actually, the Hubert Ingram one wasn't even his old constituency. It was just on the side of something. But I think that, and those are the ones that I've witnessed. I'm certain that there are more from different parties. It just so happens that all those are from the FNM. All right? But there must be some way, all right? Because I know that to put up a billboard, you're supposed to go to beaches and parks and apply for permission to erect a billboard, and you pay whatever, little bit of money, blah, 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 right? Fine, whatever, cool. But they're on every single lamppost in some areas. So I live close to Soldier Road and Blue Hill Road, and they're on every lamppost. And I feel like there must be some way, and it will require some paperwork, and I don't think it's going to happen in time for this election, but this is the second election that I'm going to offer this solution. They should have to pay for every lamp-pole that has a sign on it. They should have to give that money to BPL, and it'd be per month. And every time you go over a month, you get charged for the next full month, whether or not you take it down 2 days later. Maybe give them 2 days grace, but once you're 5 days into the new month, you get charged for that month. They give BPL that money. BPL takes a part of the money, and then they take the rest of the money and they put it into some sort of fund that is established for that community. Like, everybody gets all hyped about this idea of a sovereign wealth fund, right? But disregard that, because that's not how that works. Unless you are in Alaska, a sovereign wealth fund is not going to send any money into your pocket. What you actually want is, let's say you live, trying to think of a community that, let's say you live in Garden Hills, hypothetically, right? Live in Garden Hills, and there was a Garden Hills fund. And this Garden Hills community fund, constituency fund, would go to fund projects within the constituency and the community, right? And part of the way that you'd raise the money is like all these little signs and stuff. And then I've heard Mr. Fox saying something about a Garden Hills fund, right? And it's like, you know what? It's not 1,000% a bad idea. And then I've heard Mr. Bastian saying that his community center, he's set up the system so that essentially it's not being run by him. It's like, okay, this is in the hands of an organization that acts in the interest of the people of Fort Charlotte. So whether or not he's there, that should still operate and run efficiently and without he doesn't need to be there, all right? So it's possible, but let's hit up these dudes then, because clearly y'all have money to pay for. Listen, I work in PR. Billboards are not cheap. Film core is not cheap. Those lawn signs, the amount that you guys are getting, they're not cheap. So why not tax these guys as the community, not as the government? Because then it'll become a weird petty back and forth, and then whoever wins will be like, they won't tax their own people. And be like, oh, it's okay, don't worry, but then we get it next time. No. If you're in my community, let's say hypothetically, I mean, I'm not in Garden Hills, but let's say Garden Hills, because I've seen the abundance of signs that are just there. Pay a little fee. Some of it goes back directly into the community. Some goes for the upkeep of the infrastructure that you're utilizing to further your campaign as a political person. I feel like that's a fair trade-off. Because like, that way, even if I don't like you as a political candidate, if you help to put $1,000 into the community so that the kids have an after-school program, there's a little lunch program, there's a little summer program, because during the summer, everybody's looking for something for their kids to do, you know, and that churches only have, like, they might have vacation Bible school for a week, and then somebody will have something for a week. But summer is 2 months long. I think this is a way that we could find new ways to invest, because you are going to put those signs up. And this would, of course, you know, it wouldn't just apply to political people. It would also apply to every time somebody randomly puts up a wet and mad, soapy beach party situation on a poster. You know, kick back some of that to the community. This is just a random thought. None of that is what we're talking about today. Today, I want to talk about, well, inevitably we get to immigration. But what I want to talk about is I think that a lot of people think that the COI, let me not say a lot of people, there's a significant number of people who think that the COI is a joke. And they're like, well, who are the actual supporters of the COI? And, you know, is this a real thing? It's like, no one could take this seriously, right? Because we live in echo chambers. And so if you don't support the COI, chances are you don't have friends who support the COI. And so you get the same feedback back and forth where it's like, oh, Lincoln's crazy. That's ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. But then, as I've traversed the land, it occurs to me that an even more significant part of the population thinks that, how bad could it be? Now, I think that life can always get worse, right? That is the negative, pessimistic outlook that I have on existence, probably a response to childhood trauma or something, but I think that life can always get worse. But there are people out there who are like, it can't get no worse than it is now. They're wrong. But that's how they feel. And more than one occasion, I'll be having a conversation with somebody and they seem like a nice individual. They seem like a level-headed person. They seem like a nice, go to church on Sundays, help out at a food bank, salt of the earth, hardworking, blue-collar people. And they feel as though there is no option for them in the PLP or the F&M. And they feel as though the COI presents an option. And here's the thing. I think that anybody who is not looking at why they're considering that an option is not really, they're doing a disservice for the country, all right? Now, I'm not comparing the COI to Idi Amin or Adolf Hitler. I'm going to an extreme to make a point. People, because of time and distance and just like literally 1930s Germany is not only physically far away, but it's a long time ago. 1960s Uganda is not just physically far away, but it's a long time ago. And so we think of those people as different, and that maybe those people were just okay with it. And that's how it ended up in such a situation. And that's not really how it works, right? The way populism works is that it's popular. And it's popular because there's something that's being said that resonates. Now, it might be a fallacy. It might be that the thing that's being said as the reason why your car tire always flat is because evil gremlins living in your neighborhood is come and take the air out your tire as a part of big air in the Bahamas so that you can never have, so you always be late for work and your tire always flat and the mess up at your ball joint. That's what they say. And even though there is no gremlin, your tire is always flat. So there is a level of truth there, and that resonates with you because until that point, no one is listening to you and saying, hey, my tire is flat. So whoever comes to you and is trying to address the issue of a flat tire, you're going to listen to them because nobody else is addressing the issue of a flat tire. Other persons may say, hey, your tire is flat, but just give it a little bit of time, air will naturally come back into it. Other persons are like, your tire is flat because that other party is corrupt. But your tire at the end of the day is still flat. And so now you're saying, oh, my tire is flat. What is the reason for this? Now, it might be something simple, like you might have a leak. You might need to, like me, need to get your wheels aligned so the side of it stops rubbing up against the tire and the tire wear out too quickly. You might need to change the little valve because the valve might have a leak in it, right? It can be any number of things. But no one's addressing your tire. Everyone's just pushing it off. And so now along comes somebody and they say the reason why your tire is flat is because the Jews. The reason why your tire is flat is Obonte? I can't remember the name of the opposition in Uganda at the time. All right? Well, it wasn't even the opposition. Apparently, Idi Amin was in the same government as the guy he overthrew. Who knew? And neither of them died. Anyway, But yeah, in the case of Hitler, you say the Jews are the reason why. And at first people are like, I don't know. But that's the thing. If that's the only solution and that's the only answer, then that becomes the conversation. Now the conversation is, well, is the problem that the Jewish bankers are taking all the money, that tribe over there is they're hurting us and they're taking all the land and they don't care about us and they're corrupt and they're stealing all the gold? That becomes the conversation. And it becomes the conversation because nobody is addressing your flat tire. And so I think for persons who might say, I hear the things that are being offered, and I understand why that would not work, myself included, all right? I understand why I have extreme reservations about everything COI related. But am I addressing the underlying issue? And the reason I say that this is going to be a conversation about immigration is because that's where it's landed. We've taken, well, not we. There have been underlying problems that have plagued the Bahamas for decades. For decades. At this point, nearly a century, some could argue, right? Because it's almost the 30s again. And so we can argue in the 1930s, in the 1920s, jobs in the Family Islands and their ability to make a livelihood or living in the Family Islands was, you know, and that there was a wealth imbalance. There was you could argue all those things for the 1920s, you could argue them now, right? But at least back then, if you lived on a Family Island, you could go in the bush somewhere, and if you could build a house, you build a house, and you'd have somewhere to live. We don't even have that anymore, you know? So in some ways, we've regressed. And so now, how do you make a living? Things cost so much because we import more stuff than we make. And so we are beholden to the prices of external forces. Food costs money, all right? We need infrastructure. Infrastructure costs money because you still got to bill it with something, all right? We need medication. Medication costs money, right? And then the quality of things that you have in the country impact your health and your livelihood and how well you can work. And then what you're being paid is not keeping up with the cost of how much things cost. And all these things are coming to bear. And you also, there is no grand hope. The things that kept our parents and our grandparents at bay from just running up and burning everything down and flipping over all the tables was that if I stay on this job for 20 years, I will have a house. I will be able to relax. I can enjoy the last 20 years of my life in peace somewhere. And that is gone. That no longer exists. Matter of fact, nobody has one job anymore. Nobody under the age of 40 has a single job. And it doesn't matter how much money they make, because the more money you make, it seems as though it doesn't matter, right? We make 4 times as much as our parents and our grandparents, and we can't buy any of the stuff that they were able to buy. We have to go into debt to get a car. We can't even go into debt to buy a house because everything is beyond us. Some would say that fault lies with the Immovable Properties Act. I being one of those people. And the question is, how do we fix these things, right? These are the flat tires. And so when somebody says to you, the way that you fix it is you do this. It's so simple. All you have to do is, we have the land, just give the land to the people, right? That sounds tempting because you suddenly see, oh my gosh, if I had a piece of property, the weight, the burden that would be lifted off my shoulder. You start to see, if I had $100,000, the weight, the burden that would be lifted off my shoulder. What is preventing this, right? And why are the schools not running efficiently? Why is the healthcare system so clogged up? Why is all these bad things happening? And how do we fix it? And so we now hear everybody just saying immigration, 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 right? Because, and let's, as a sidebar, could we just for a moment, could we cease the pretending as though that when we say immigration, because this is a conversation I actually had with a person who is a COI supporter recently. The conversation will start off with anyone who did not come into the country the right way needs to be dealt with. I have a problem with all illegal immigrants, which, you know, forgive me and my native Baptist way of thinking, I don't know if that's a legitimate statement. I don't know if a person can be illegal. But anyway, whatever, right? Anybody who comes in illegally, those people should be dealt with. And it goes from that, and when you start pushing back, it stops being that and it starts being Haitians. Because if it really is an issue of illegal migration, illegal immigrants, persons who are not from this country, who are not citizens of this country, not abiding by the rules of this country, having to deal with the consequence of that action, it's not going to be just Haitians, right? And whether that's, I'm going to take a break right now, 1 second, right? But it's not just how did this person get here, right? It's also what all is this person allowed to do? Because if you are here on a work permit, and whether that's a work permit to work at a hotel or a bank, or a work permit to be a day laborer, whatever it might be, you are only allowed to work where and doing what that work permit says that you're allowed to do. Theoretically, if that person has ever sold anything on Facebook Marketplace, if they've exchanged funds in any way for a service that isn't tied directly to the job and the business and the person who signed up them for that work permit, they're breaking the law. How many persons are going to get repatriated immediately back to their first world countries? Right? And so like it, and if it's a culture thing, right, where a person's like, they feel uncomfortable when they hear so many people speaking Creole, which is, I mean, like, are you upset because somebody can speak another language? Don't get me wrong. I understand the immediate sense of startle. Startle is the best word I can think of. You're walking down the road and you do not understand what's being said around you. That can be jarring, but at the same time, listen, I've gone to Germany. I don't know a lick of German. Did the Germans throw rocks at me for coming to their country and not even bothering to learn what the German word for water is? No. I mean, one of them rolled their eyes, like, right? And then help me in McDonald's. I've been to Dubai. Don't know a thing. I think the only Arab words I know is Assalamu alaikum and Wa alaikum salam. I don't know anything else. All right? Did they drag me into the desert and tie me to a camel? No, they didn't. All right? Sometimes people just speak a different language. And if you have the ability to speak more than one language, and there is a language, there's a language that you need to express something in because there's a particular word and a particular way to say it. I can't fault you for that, but I understand. It may be jarring. And so people are like, why can't they just assimilate? Why can't they just be real behavior? I hear what you're saying, but we don't come down with the same level of pressure and say we should not have any Greek celebrations because we love gyros or euros, and we like Greek bear, and we like the Greek festival inside the middle of the road. So we're not going to tell people who have been here from the 1800s to stop being Greek and just be Bahamian. We're not going to tell the Chinese that they can't have the dragon boat race. We're not going to tell the Jamaicans that they can't have Jamaican Independence Day celebrations. We're not going to tell the Guyanese that they can't do their thing. You know, like, we're not, the idea of this being about everybody is interesting because I know and you know it's not about everybody. I know and you know that this is a situation where the word immigration is being used as the polite way to say Haitians in public. And I feel uncomfortable with the fact that every party has now followed the lead of the COI, and the COI can take credit for this, for making immigration the most important talking point. I feel uncomfortable with that. I feel uncomfortable with the fact that a candidate with an African surname running in Carmichael can talk about immigration as though Bahamians can tell the difference between Africans and Haitians. I feel weird that a candidate with an American accent who has never voted before in a Bahamian election is speaking with their full chest about immigration. I feel weird about it, right? Because what is a real Bahamian? And when we start this conversation, which, here's the thing, this entire conversation is really just about the flat tire. And somebody suggested that because the immigrants are all in the schools, because the immigrants are all in the hospitals, and because the immigrants are taking all the jobs that we don't want anyway, and they are themselves being taken advantage of, that is the reason why. And because the immigrants have been told by Bahamians to come live over here in this condition and you could stay here, that all of this is the reason why our tires are flat. I feel uncomfortable because now we're going to get these things. This is stage one, and it's going to build, because it's going to build from who is a real Bahamian, aka who is not Haitian, to who is a real Bahamian, and then start getting rid of some other people based on what they do and what they don't do. And it's going to keep building. And listen, this won't affect me for at least 3 steps. It'll affect me when they get to the part of, do you eat guava duff? Oh, well, then you're not a real Bahamian. Then they'll drag me off to the concentration camp. I have time. It's everybody else. I'm worried about the people who are in an attempt to fix their flat tire, about to put themselves in a horrible position. I'm going to take a break right now, I promise. Been listening to the radio, I've heard people suggesting that, because now suddenly everybody's concerned about fraudulent documents, which, listen, that's a problem. I'm acknowledging it's a problem, but I'm also acknowledging that it's not a new problem. The people have been stealing passports for years. The people have been attempting to forge documents for years. And it's inevitable when your voter's card is literally a piece of chart paper. Any third grade teacher could forge the voter's card, guys. It's not that hard. But now that this has become a thing, I've heard somebody on the radio suggesting that we need to worry about not just the person who forged the Bahamian documents so that they could say that they are Bahamian. We need to worry about their offspring who got Bahamian citizenship because of their parents' forged documents. And now, this enters a whole new set of stuff because, let's be honest, all right? I remember B.J. Nottage standing in the House of Assembly and saying at one point, while he was the Minister for, I want to say National Security, that 70% of Bahamian households are single-parent households. And I'm going to assume that the majority of them live with the mother parent and not the father parent. When we start to say, okay, well, is this person a real Bahamian? Is this something that we want to be weaponized? Because now it's like, okay, sure, your mother's a Bahamian, but now 2 steps down, we say, well, maybe you should always have whatever the nationality of your father is. Maybe we have a referendum and change the Constitution. Or maybe, because nobody reads the Constitution, we don't even double check on it. By the time you check on it, the people are already on the plane, headed to Port-au-Prince, headed to Jamaica, headed to Guyana, headed back to wherever, all right? And you say, well, who this person daddy is? Could you imagine a world where something like that is weaponized in this country? If you just, and then imagine if you don't even just say father, if you go take it back and say, well, who your granddaddy is. How many people could say, who is their grandfather on their father's side? Worse if you say your great-granddaddy. This leads to all sorts of problems. And these problems are because no one checked when everybody was complaining that their tire is flat. All of that was the intro. I'm going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. You are watching and listening to Sidebar 103 to Be podcast powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. We'll be right back.
Play for fun, not for funds.
In the Bahamas, we play hard, but we live smart.
We love a little competition.
A little excitement, a little thrill.
And at Island Luck, gaming is all about entertainment.
Shared moments, celebrating the wins, and enjoying the experience.
The key is simple. Play for fun, not for funds.
When you set a budget before you start,
And know your limits, you stay in control.
And when you're in control, the game stays what it's meant to be.
Fun.
so play for fun, not for funds.
Must be 18 and over. Island Luck reminds you that it's only a game, so please game responsibly. Wealth should not only belong to a select few. At InvestStar, we believe the door should be open to everyone. We provide options for planning a better future. Our investment funds are designed to assist you in reaching your long-term financial goals. Let us show you how.
Welcome back to Sidebar, 103 to B podcast, powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. I mean, theoretically, we're talking about immigration. I don't want to say we're talking about a flat tire, because that doesn't make any sense at all. So, this is what my actual concern is. My actual concern is that there are things that persons are just ignoring, right? Political parties on every side have ignored, all right? And for various reasons. Some would say because their paymasters won't allow them to talk about it. Some just don't see it, and others might be working towards addressing it, but they are working at a pace, or they are not making it publicly known well enough for people to realize that they are addressing the issue. But the issues are legitimate. And because the issues are legitimate, when somebody comes along as a populist leader and says, hey, don't you hate that you don't have a piece of property? Don't you hate that you have nowhere to live? Don't you hate that when you go to the hospital, it's a 20-hour wait before a doctor sees you, and that the only way to be seen in the hospital immediately is to be shot? Don't you hate that? Don't you hate that what our schools are turning out is not sufficient to lead our country forward? There's a whole entire scam of what the education system is that we do not have time to discuss. But when somebody says these things to you, it suddenly makes sense, whatever they say, because they're the first person to acknowledge your pain. You know? And so now this part, I would like to talk to the people who have the ability to address the issues legitimately, to say, hey, here's what's happening. Because that has to be a part of the conversation in earnest. You cannot just allow everything to be shifted to this boogeyman in the corner. That everything, oh yeah, it is definitely immigration. Immigration is the problem. I'm certain that there must be at least one bad immigrant. I have no doubt. I have no doubt that there are probably horrible people who are of Haitian descent. They must exist because that's how humans work. However, I cannot believe that if we got rid of every single Haitian in this country, that the country would be better. Because here's a little fun fact. Haitians have not priced me out of getting a house. They've not priced you out of getting a house. Another fun fact, Haitians are not underpaying you at any job that you work at. That's just a fun fact, you know? What else is it? Haitians aren't, well, let me not say that. There might be at least a couple, maybe more than a couple, who aren't paying their real property tax to help fund the revenue needed to pay for doctors and nurses and for the healthcare system to work properly. But there's a lot of other people too who aren't paying it, you know? There's a lot of people who are, let's stick to the metaphor, because we'll be all day talking about the things that a lot of people are doing. So, if we are to address the actual problem, let's think about it. And I'm going to keep going back to land because I feel, so on the hierarchy of human needs, there's food, you need food to eat, and you need shelter. Those are at the bottom. That's the base level. That's before you get to anything else. You need food and you need shelter. You need someplace where when you go down to sleep, you feel safe, right? So let's address those. You shouldn't starve to death because you're poor. And luckily in the Bahamas, somebody will give you something to eat. But you shouldn't be at risk of being homeless and thrown out in the elements at the age of 64 because you're poor. And that doesn't matter if you are a nice 64-year-old or the most miserable 64-year-old in the world. You shouldn't die on the side of the road because you didn't have a house. You shouldn't have to live in the bush at 60-something years old because you don't have a place to live. You know what I mean? And so I'm going to use land as an example. Now, let's say you go to a party. Nice family get-together, house party, and me and you, we're walking in together, right? Now, there are some people at the party, and their job is to serve the food. They didn't cook the food, they didn't pay for the food, but their job is to serve the food. If they see somebody on the line that they like, they give them a little extra. If they see somebody on the line that they don't really like this person too much, then they get a little light. They give you 1 spoonful of rice and they say, keep going. Other people ain't eat yet. They suddenly remember to be altruistic. But if you go in the kitchen, and this is the most behemoth of realities, every time there is an event where food is being given out, go in the kitchen and look on the top of the fridge. There will be at least 5 plastic bags filled to the brim with styrofoam containers filled with the choicest of meats, all of the rices, all of the macaronis, all of the coleslaws and all of the sides, all of the trimmings. At least 20 plates, if not more, on top of the fridge. The people who are in charge of serving have not only taken up food for themselves for later, which is, listen, hey, if you take a plate of food up for yourself, that one plate of food for you is one thing. Taking up 4 plates for you to take home so that you can have another plate tomorrow, and then your husband need a plate, and then your child home. They're at this party. This food is for the people at this party. People have not eaten yet, and you are already taking multiple plates. So now, if we imagine that instead of food, we're talking about land, we're talking about resources. There are people who have the ability, who have access to the resources that we need. And instead of sharing it up equally, or at all, by the time me and you get on the line, there is no more rice. There's no more fish. There's 1 leg of chicken, half of the meat is gone off it, and they ask if me and you want to split it. And so inevitably, we both feel disgusted, we feel upset, we feel like we are not at home at this party, and this is unfair. But then we see somebody who's not related to us walking by, and they're chewing. And we say, well, how does this immigrant have food to eat? Now, unbeknownst to us, they take a piece of bread, 1 roll, off of somebody's plate that the person leave, and then they leave on the plate, they eat everything, all the chicken, everything gone. They take just 1 roll. They didn't want the roll, they had it, but they say, I don't want this bread no more. This person, they take the bread, crumbs if you will, and they eating the roll. But we mad at them for having a piece of the scraps, for somehow making that work. But the person directly in front of us have plates of food. They have enough food in the back there on top of the fridge in the kitchen for me, you, and the person who eating the bread. And enough for them to still have their plate of food. We do not lack in resources. What we lack is accountability in how they are dispersed. And as long as we are not willing to admit that, as long as we are not willing to address that, as a country, as a nation, somebody's going to come in the house and say whatever they want to say, and we're going to say, they're right, I am hungry. And it is unfair. I had nothing to eat. Why is he eating? He's not even related to us. Now, does that address the actual issue? Not really. The 4 or 5 plates of food still on top of the fridge. Maybe we get an extra piece of chicken next time. Maybe we don't. Because we're not addressing the actual issue. What we're doing is, well, not what we are doing. What is happening is somebody is taking advantage of the fact that there is a problem that is obvious and palatable, and everybody can taste and feel that this is an issue, but no one is addressing it. And now it's being scapegoated as immigration. How is any government going to go in the kitchen and take the food from on top of the refrigerator and give it to everyone without the people who put it on top of the refrigerator away from us getting upset and taking all their stuff and going home? Without them saying, well, me and my friends won't invest in this country anymore. I hope that was a vague enough accent to not offend anybody, but hey, whatever, I don't care anymore. How do we get that to happen? That's the conversation we should be having. Because here's the thing. Let's go to craziest, worst case scenario, right? We get rid of all the foreigners. We get rid of everybody who was not born in this country. We also get rid of everybody who was born to somebody who wasn't born in this country. And it doesn't matter if you have one Bahamian parent, we get rid of all of them. Matter of fact, let's get rid of everybody whose great-great-grandfather and grandmother were not born in this country. We suddenly cut the entire population down to a quarter, right? I won't be here. I got a little Bayesian in me somewhere, right? So we cut it all down. We're down to a quarter of the population. Hopefully, it is the quarter that knows how to run the electricity and turn on the stuff at the hospital. Hopefully. Maybe it isn't, maybe it is. I promise you, you still won't have a house. I promise you, you will still owe the bank so much money. Because that was never the problem. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up. You are watching and listening to Sidebar 103 to B podcast, powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Paradise Premium Foods, where exceptional taste meets everyday convenience. Right in the heart of Hurricane Hole Plaza, whether you're planning a beachside brunch, an intimate dinner, or simply restocking your favorites, we offer only the finest selection of local and imported goods, handpicked for quality, freshness, and flavor. At Paradise Premium Foods, shopping is effortless, service is personal, and every visit feels like a treat. From gourmet meals to go, to organic essentials and indulgent treats, this is your neighborhood market elevated. Live well, eat better. Discover Paradise Premium Foods, now open at Hurricane Hole Plaza, Paradise Island. Paradise Premium Foods, taste the difference.
Once something becomes the common behavior, it is the common behavior. When you operate at that level, personal emotions simply cannot float to the top.
For the average normal person that goes to the store, things like that affect us.
They must be judicious in the execution of their duty.
Well, I think whatever the nurses want, give it to them.
Pages, you know, you do everything on your phone now. You see how old he was?
What are we walking back? That Bimini is no longer an island?
That's
okay,
not
because
what he was trying
because
to
he also
say. Carla, I don't even know what breadbasket is anymore either. What do y'all people say?
The race to 2026 is heating up, and the nation's voice is louder than ever. Here on Beyond the Headlines, we're checking the mood, the momentum, and the message of the people. I'm Shanique Miller. Each week, we're taking the temperature of the electorate to see what's really driving the nation. Who's connecting? Who's cooling off? What issues are heating up ahead of 2026? This is Temperature Check 2026, where journalism meets the nation's heartbeat.
Welcome back to Sidebar 103 to Be podcast, powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. We had a lot of fun today. Not really. It's just me screaming in this stuffed up voice. I apologize once again for all the mouth breathing and the very long pauses that I take. So there's the last two things that I would like to leave you with, right? And so I've been listening to the political rallies. I've been listening to the hot takes and the quotable moments and reading the headlines and stuff, right? I really shouldn't. I don't know why. At this point, I think I'm going to check out and just next week just talk about cartoons. But because it just gets me upset. All right, so here's the thing. I think it is, and this is me by myself, I'm going to lose some of you on this point. I don't think that it makes sense. I'm going to lose so many people on this. So the idea that if the only law that you break in the country is an immigration law, in that you entered the country incorrectly, but you've never broken any other law, but that alone makes you ineligible to enter the country correctly, to me sounds ridiculous. Now, I can understand if you enter the country correctly and then overstayed your welcome, and then, so there's like all right, for 5 years you can't come in. That's a different situation. But to then say, oh, you broke this law. What is the law? You entered the country incorrectly. Well, from where I came from, this was the only way that I was told that I could enter. I didn't know any other way to enter. I really wanted to come here, and so I came here this way. I don't know if that makes sense, because that feels like when a person's only charge is resisting arrest, which luckily doesn't often happen in the Bahamas. It happens in the States a lot, and every time it's like, wait, so what is the actual charge? What were they resisting arrest for? What was the initial arrest? Oh no, that's thrown out. But the crime is resisting arrest. But you're not allowed to detain me for nothing. There must be no, it's just a resisting arrest. So I'm going to go to jail for not wanting to go to jail. That doesn't make sense. I also have very strong feelings about, you really shouldn't add time on to anybody's sentence if they escape from prison. That's really the fault of the prison. But once again, That's Stephen's own unpopular opinion. The bigger issue that I have is that because of this recent thing where everybody keeps talking about fraudulent documents and whether or not the voters' register is contaminated, it is filled with non-Bahamians, false Bahamians, new Bahamians, not real Bahamians, zombie Bahamians, whatever offensive, derogatory, pejorative they come up with, all right? At least 2 political parties out there are gearing up to not just be like, they rob us. Because listen, if you do that, that's a very Bahamian thing to do. It's like John Canoe, yeah man, we were supposed to win that. Clearly he had the best music. I'm fine with that. Be upset. Let's take it to election court. Let's recount it. Let's do all of that. My bigger concern is that I see the argument coming. And I can see the problem is not this election, it's the election to follow. At least 2 of these political parties are going to say we only lost because all of those non-Bahamians were voting. It's a fraudulent election. This is a fraudulent prime minister. This is not my MP. This government is illegitimate. And that's all it takes. And we're now on step 3. This is what I would like all right-thinking individuals to be aware of. When you start to hear them saying, oh, but that person wasn't really a Bahamian. All the people on the line, half of them wasn't Bahamian. They didn't look Bahamian to me. I don't even know what a Bahamian looked like at this point. That's my concern. So, may the odds be ever in whomever's favor. In a month, or less than a month from now, we'll know who's the government, and they will have 3.5 years to undo or to backtrack, pedal this clear argument that's going to be coming there, where their legitimacy is questioned. And hopefully, the biometric cards will help, but then people will say, oh no, everything is poison, everything, But if I could always say, hey, this ain't real, because I don't like how it come out, then what? Then what? Where does that leave us? But you know what? That's a different issue for a different day. I'll leave you to carry that weight through the rest of this week. Thank you for watching and listening. Once again, this has been Sidebar, 103 to Beat podcast, powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. True God still.
So you want a space. But not just any space. You need something with a little more potential. So how about 1,000 square feet of room to play with? Superb audio and video production capability, digital LED wall, full lighting grid, and about 124 seats to accommodate a full studio audience with so many other features. Make us your home for your next concert, conference, and so much more. Honestly, the possibilities are endless. Here at ILTV Studios, we'd love to bring your next event to life. So what do you say? Do you want our space?